Hi there, Dave Levine here. Thanks for joining me for episode 7 of the Sports Stories podcast. You may recall our special guest in the previous show was Paul Smith, sharing elements of his story as a professional cricketer. Well, our special guest today is Pete Ackerley. Pete also has a connection with cricket. Following many years working in the banking industry, Pete then moved on to work with the England-Wales Cricket Board and then moved to another large and influential governing body in the Football Association. I've known Pete and worked alongside him for many years. Pete has a vast experience of working in sport development and is currently the Chief Executive Officer of British American Football. I'm really delighted to have him with me today to share some of his journey and some of his great insights and experiences. I'd therefore like to take this opportunity to wish Pete a very warm welcome to the Sports Stories podcast. Pete, it's really great to see you again. Thanks for joining me on the Sports Stories podcast. I was been reflecting earlier today about the times when we first met, and I think we first came together and worked alongside each other when you were at the ECB, and that was probably over 20 years ago, and it really took me by surprise there. So it's fabulous to have you on, and I know part of your story from being partly involved in sort of the retail banking sector right through sport, and there's been many ups and downs, many opportunities for you, as I know, to work within some really high-profile sporting organisations, which I know you still are heavily involved in those sports. So a good place for me to start would be to just ask you to tell me a little bit more about yourself so the people that are listening in can get a sense of who you are, because I know you quite well, but they don't. So tell me a little bit about yourself and possibly start off with your first memory of sport.
Well, first memory is clearly you always realise you played sport from a young age. But I've always played sport. And it was only in a very recent, during the lockdown, sorting out of drawers and loft spaces and cupboards, found an old, very, very old black and white photograph of me playing cricket on a beach. I think it was Blackpool Beach, and I would be 18 months old, and with a bat and a ball. That's probably about as good as I ever was with a bat and a ball, to be perfectly honest. But I always remember thinking there were people watching me play, and I don't remember being 18 months old or 2 years, obviously, but there was something in that I could do this. And I've always played sport, cricket, football, rugby, golf, could never, where I come from a council estate, Cadishead Council Estate in Salford. Luckily enough, through all that process, went to a grammar school, which then really opened up the ability to play sport.
Was sport in your family then as well? Is that how you got involved in it? Yeah.
Not so much in the way I would see it now. Dad was a cricket fan, and encouraged me, but wasn't a great cricketer, but was very keen. Mum, not really any sporting, but two parents who gave you the opportunity and encouraged you, but weren't members of sports clubs, weren't members of a local cricket, football, tennis club, weren't coaches, weren't able financially to access that system. So, I learnt my cricket at the end of the street against a lamppost. That was it. That was where you learn. It's and you only could score square of the wicket or straight down the other street. So even when I played at any level, there's only 3 places I could ever score runs, because that's all I could ever do. I wasn't very good at that either, to be fair. But
and then carried it on through school and later on in life.
Yeah, through school, through then met friends who were then part of a cricket club, and then then started playing at probably in terms of organised cricket, probably 13 or 14 years old, there or thereabouts. And then quickly, it was in those days where you had someone who you now know as probably a mentor and someone who looked out for you. Unfortunately, my father was ill when I was young and wasn't able to support in that way. So someone at the cricket club then took you under their wing and sort of encouraged you and gave you all of that advice and guidance, and let you make every mistake possible, but then take the learning from it. And that's how I got involved and played cricket, football, and rugby, and just played any sport I could. Just frustrated PE teacher. Probably that's what I wanted to be. But at the time, it was 16. Go and get a job. We needed money coming into the household. It was simple as that. So, but lucky, got a job in a bank, and that enabled me to work, earn, and thankfully then play sport, and gave me the opportunity to do that. So that's how I got involved in cricket and played in the leagues in and around Lancashire for many years.
So your first kind of real job, as it were, was in banking, nothing to do with sport. Yeah. What was it and when was it that you recognised and wanted a job in sport?
I suppose it was towards the end of my time. Don't get me wrong, I was in that era in the mid 80s in banking. It was Wall Street, red stripy shirts, red braces, and it was it was that point of and late 80s. I was banking. I was really lucky to do business management courses, MBAs. I even worked abroad for a year, working in a different country in a different language, and great experiences.
Where were you? Where did you go and work?
I went to live and work in Spain and learned my Spanish in Madrid, and then went to work in a bank in Cordoba in Andalusia, which is like probably learning English in a language school in London and then arriving in Newcastle the following morning, and it was as though I had to relearn Spanish in a completely different accent and culture, which was a great ability for putting yourself under pressure, and learning about yourself is huge. And you translated that, and I suppose then it was all those working in banking, eventually you get frustrated by it. And I think I probably had one of those groundhog days of another day, and I've just done that. Sure, I absolutely have just done that, and it was now. And you only that I've got to do this now. I was very lucky early in my career, got promoted, did well, got to various levels in the bank, and great opportunities like I've just talked about. But then, it's sort of about 30 years old, you realise I've got to do this for the rest of my life. Yeah. And then it was, what else do I really, really want to do? And why do I want to do it? And that was the opportunity then to set myself up. It took a couple of years to think it through, but then started to work in, I was playing cricket at the time as coaching as part of the role. And
what was it then that helped you recognise that you wanted to go and get a job in the sport world, or was it in cricket in particular?
No, it was probably through my cricket coaching. And as a role as being a professional in a club, you start to coach other people. And, it was one of the club I was at, and we had a very, very young side. Well, no, when I went there, we had a very old, poor side. And it was a question, well, if we're going to get beat every week with these old dodderers around, I might as well get all these kids in, and we'll develop them to be the best they can be. And I mean, we had a huge amount of fun, but I found that just investing in people, making people better, making a difference to what they did, then really started to, I like this. And then through that, and it was at the time of, this was now probably early 90s, and Champion Coaching had just started its I think Champion Coaching probably started in 1991, something like that. Yeah. So this would have been around about 92, 93, started, well, do you know what, someone asked me and said, you can go and coach on these courses, and you invest in kids, and you make them better, and you get better, you get invested in. There was, I'd never heard of coach development at that point, but actually, you mean I can get better as well? Yeah, and you suddenly realise that what I want to do is get better at what I do, because if I get better at what I do, people I'm working with can grow and be much, much better at what they do. And so that was probably the time I really realised it was developing sport and developing people, not just coaching people.
And was that something then that it just came to you, that kind of realisation through your experiences, or was there anybody around you at that time that helped you kind of make sense of that?
I think it was at that time where I was probably the first time I met Sue Campbell, Dame Sue Campbell now, and it was the early stages of the trust and the TOPS program and investing in kids and adding to that Champion Coaching. And it's just one of those times of, was probably the biggest inspiration for me doing what I did. And, still to this day, in awe of what she's achieved, how she's achieved it. We've not always agreed. We've had a couple of fallout, not always agreed, but absolutely in awe of someone's single-minded purpose and drive to develop sport and people in sport in this country. And I'm probably one of a myriad of people who owes everything they've done to Sue's vision and drive and and setting out what this is what we can do.
What she's a very influential person in the sporting landscape. What one or two things has she really given you? What impact did she really give you, and what did you learn from her, would you say, in those early stages of your career in sport?
Yeah, I think it was probably, whether she gave it or whether that's what I took from the conversations and the environment, was, have an absolute clarity of why you're doing what you're doing. Not, well, I'm coaching, or I'm making them better, or I'm teaching them something. It's why are you doing what you're doing? And it just became really clear that I just want to make a difference to these people and make them as good as they can be, not make them the best, or only coach elite, or only coach a certain. It's just everybody you can make a bit better. And I always talk about it's just finding what's in there, whatever it is, and getting it out. And there you go. There's an improvement. You're better than you were. You've made a difference. You're enjoying it more. That's as big an impact. There's more enjoyment, and they come. And I've always talked on that. You come back again. My point has always been: if you leave them at the end of the session and they come back the next week, then that's a pretty big start in what you do.
And Pete, you've given quite a lot away around your approach or your philosophy. Could you encapsulate that in a phrase or a saying or a motto that's driven you through your career at all?
Well, I've always stressed, sort of, probably, if everybody now you have a hashtag, obviously, and I always sort of, when I follow people on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I always sort of try and catch. You always want to catch people doing great things, and that's what I think is a good thing about what we all do. Catch your people doing good things and let them know and support them. And I always sort of use the hashtag, making a difference, and that person's made a difference, and I like that. But I probably nail it down to, probably 3-4 things. Create opportunities for people. That's what we all do. Create as many opportunities, and the right opportunities at the right time in the right place. And make the opportunity focused on the individual. I think that's really important that we focus. That's one of the things I took from probably business, about being customer focused, about not the customer's right, but you focus on the customer need, and that's the participant need in our world. So create the opportunity, continuously improve everything you do, and what we do. So that striving for doing 1,000 things 1% better, not one thing 1,000% better. So it's that continuous improvement. And then probably the biggest thing is influence others to help you, to guide you, to support you. And that's about your networking and your partnerships, because none of us can do this alone. It's impossible. Whatever we do, whether it's sport, business, you can't. We're in the middle of the biggest crisis, probably since the war, probably ever, possibly. We'll never do this alone. So how do you influence others to support you and help you? So that influence and networking is probably the third area. And then probably the fourth and most overriding is you want to leave something behind. A good friend of mine, who I'll probably talk about a little bit, he talked about planting a tree that you'd ever see. And that's one thing that always resonates with me when he talks about that. But it's leaving your legacy. And what is it you leave behind? And because, into the cricket, American football, any sport generally, we're just trustees. So we have to pass it on. Now. Yeah. We're just holding it for now, and we pass it on. And if we pass it on in a better condition than we found it, they'll tick. Good job. So they're the 4 things: continuous improvement, create opportunity, influence others, and leave a legacy, pass it on in a better condition than you found it.
Wow, powerful stuff. So you've started into your career here. You've got these kind of, I'm sure some of those statements or philosophies, mottos were formed by then, but also have grown and, continued to evolve as you've gone through your career. But then talk me through, into your career in sport. So you started off your career, as I understand, with the ECB in cricket.
I started at Lancashire Cricket, actually. Okay. I was at the formation when was the formation of the ECB that then created cricket boards for the first time in a formal. There was one governing body. I think there used to be 2 cricket governing bodies. There was a Test and County Cricket Board and a National Cricket Association that came together. Yeah. So Lancashire created a cricket board, and I became one of their original development managers at Lancashire. I was already working in and around what we then knew as became cricket development.
Okay.
But that was I started to get involved in and around the area, and was lucky to start to work there with some great people on the ground there. And then probably a couple of years later, 3 years later, then went to ECB.
Okay.
1999, actually World Cup year. So it was interesting. Last year I remember there was a World Cup final day. I remember 20 years before that was the start, and we, a colleague and I, Dave Layton and I, sort of set up this whole World Cup program. I went round the 1999 World Cup, starting with a World Cup program for young people linked to the World Cup.
Right.
And that was my first real involvement in a national governing body at that stage, sort of using schools and development programs to drive participation on the back of a massive event of a Cricket World Cup in England.
You really opened the door for me in terms of my curiosity around, what's coming out very strongly is your desire to want to make a difference, to grow and develop and help both individual people, but also kind of organisations, communities. And I know that's been part of the career that you've driven, both in cricket and in football. Can you take us to a place of, one of your greatest successes? What's one of the things you've been most proud of? And I'm sure there's been many, but just to give us a real sense of something you're really proud of in either your football or your cricket career.
Absolutely loved the time I had at cricket. That's 10 years at cricket, massive changes in everything we did, and grew it to what I think was one, if not the leading sport development programs in the country. Real focus on doing things right and doing the right things, and a real build and getting that focus on you can't do everything for everybody. So we had a real priority of that program. So that was one of the things that I enjoyed at cricket, was absolutely understanding that you can't give £50 to everybody in cricket and expect anything to change. You've got to take some tough decisions.
Okay.
You might make the right decisions, but they're tough decisions and then invest in some real clear focused areas. And we worked around our clubs and then the schools around those clubs, and I was really proud of the team that I had around me. You always look at the fact that they then move on and do well. You sort of think that's what you want your team to do. So that was one of the things, just of creating that program and working with partners, key stakeholders across Sport England, Sport Wales, and other partners. So that's that's when probably we got most involved with Sports Coach UK, as it was then, and yourself and Pat Duffy. That was one of my sort of biggest influences at the time around coaching and coach development. And then I think when I went to football, it was a completely different animal. I mean, it's the national sport. It's enormous.
And a lot of people would say, "Oh, different animal." What's different about it? Having been working in scale
and size of the sport, it's complete reach. I'm a massive passion for football. I love my cricket and my rugby league and my rugby union. I love my sport, but football it's this passion that just changes people and the way they react, their behaviours. It has this incredible impact on. It's tribal in some ways. I always talked about it as logos and egos. That was one of the things. It was very, very commercially driven. It was massive egos in the game, but I think more than anything, it was the scale and reach of the game. Even I think I once described it early on as thinking have I got my head around what I'm now responsible for or trying to develop, and I realised it was like nailing a jelly to a telegraph pole. You could never do it. You were just constantly trying to. And I think one of the things early on was, and I didn't come in to drive. I came in to help support the team to do what we did, and hopefully the thing I'm most proud of is during that time when I first went to the FA, we were in 8-year-olds would play football on pitches the size of Wembley in goals. The size of full adult size goal. That's what I did. What you did is what everybody did, and it was that real clear determination that this has to change. And I just remember there being when that went through, and it wasn't straightforward, and way more people, there wasn't nothing to do with me, singularly. It was a huge team effort, but one or two people specifically drove that. And I thought, my job was to make sure they had all the air cover, all the support they needed to do that specific task. Everyone used to, one of the things I don't read books and say, this is the book that you have to read to make a difference. But there's a couple of books, and one of them, David Marquette in Turn the Ship Around, he talked about the submarine commander, and he talks about it was a leader-follower. So the leader tells you everything and the followers just do what they're told.
Right.
And that was probably the first time I was, unconsciously at the time, realising that one of my team has to lead this and absolutely nail this without any distractions, deliver. And Nick Levitt, who's now working at UK Coaching, probably one of the most inspirational people around coaching and coach development and talent ID I've ever had the privilege to work with, drove that, and with a team around him. And it's one of those things you always look back now and go, well, haven't we always played 5v5 and 7v7 and 9v9 and with small pitches and the right size goals and all of the nuances that come with a proper child-focused or participant-focused sport.
As you're talking, Pete, it really strikes to me again there about, making a difference. So your philosophy or your value set coming out here, making a difference, but also leaving a legacy. There's a real legacy. And I fully understand and appreciate it's such a big ship, as you kind of painted the picture, that actually there's lots of people have a small part to play in it. But I think it's really great just hearing and recognizing the part that you played in it. Yeah.
Well, you're talking about one of those things. You just do. People say do things right, do the right things. But that was a real clear. That was the right thing to do. These kids don't deserve to play football on these huge pitches. It's just wrong. Everything said that it was wrong.
How did
but
we
it had
work?
been done for 100 years.
How did we work out though that it was the wrong thing to do and it had been done for so long? Was there a catalyst, do you think, in football world that recognised this?
And I think it was absolutely down to Nick Levitt's leadership in that he identified absolutely clearly the academic research says this. The academic studies say this is the right thing to do. Here's all the academic research that says lots of touches of a ball, playing small-sided games, adapted versions of a game, lots of fun and enjoyment. Winning's unimportant, and all the academic research tells you what you should do.
Yeah,
and it's backed up.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the fence, we've always done it this way, and that's how we should continue doing it. If any one of those had produced the academic research contrary to the other evidence, then that's a fair point. It was just, we've always done it this way, so we'll carry on. Well, definition of madness.
And I guess then was the journey that you were kind of heading and leading and helping support drive through was that change management between actually this is how we've always done it through to this is the direction, and taking the big ship and on the journey and the people on the journey to this new world. Was that the program really?
Well, I thought it was a program. It was just it was the right thing to do, and I still say to this day, if Lampard's goal against Germany in the quarterfinal in South Africa had been given, everyone would have said, "But they're in a semi-final of a World Cup again. It's all right." But actually,
key moments.
Thankfully, key moments. It wasn't, and it didn't happen. And then there was a full youth development review, and guess what? We did all the right things that should have been done, irrespective of Lampard's goal or otherwise. But I mean, it wasn't a program. It was a behavioural change, a philosophical change across football, which, that's where you have to take your hat off to the Football Association at that time, was this is cultural change, and it was bought into across the piece. And, the Football Association takes stick, and unwarranted in many, many ways. That was the right thing to do, and singularly across an organisation from every level and at every point was the right thing to do. So much so that everybody who I remember was vehemently against it says that was my decision to take it that way. And that's the classic thing in life, isn't it? Once you make it as long as it's their decision, massive power behind that.
So we've got a great tip there, isn't it, about how to influence others and make it their decision to help us move the cultural and philosophical change. What needs to be done now? What do you reckon, if we were to look into a crystal ball, where's the next move?
In sport, you're talking about in the landscape we are now.
Yeah, let's go broader into either into football or into sport in the broader landscape, because we're in changing, challenging times, and I wonder what the next big thing would be.
I think what you have to look at here now is this is the opportunity in the challenge. There are so many things that we do, and we all complain about, and we have to do it that way because we've always done it that way. This is the structure, and now is a chance beyond anything I've ever known in the sporting landscape to press a reset button. And I think if you always said now, or if we all, and we've all sat around it, you and I have done it, and with a million other different people in a bar late at night at a conference, sport shouldn't look like it does in this country. And if you were trying to explain it to an alien, you'd never get it across. And it's a spaghetti bowl of diagrams. And maybe now is the time to reset and let's look at what do we need. What is the why of what we want to do? We want more people active, and it's proven. We want more people active, but we want people to play sport. We know inherently it's good for young people. But it drives them. It's a million, whether it's an education, a social, the health,
mental health.
Mental health. It's everyone just prescribes sport and physical activity as the thing that. So what's the reset button to do that? To do that most effectively, probably now more than anything to do that in an economically viable method. And it's probably a lot cheaper because the money that we've had in sport is going to shrink. That's without doubt. I mean, that's. And I'm not an economist, but that would help. That's how it's going to look.
You are a banker, though, so money is in your
I was
mind.
a banker, yeah. So and if you're looking at sport as your customer, well, you're going to have to diversify, you're going to have to shrink your business, you're going to have to work accordingly, you're going to have to look at new markets, you're going to have to think differently about how you operate. Well, why would sport not want to do that?
Yeah, some great parallels. We're just small businesses here, aren't they?
Well, yeah, exactly that. And we are a business of sport. Unless, I make no bones about sort of saying, we are all sport professionals. Yeah. We're not just people who like kicking and throwing a ball around. We're sport professionals. There's a lot of people in this industry, very bright, very intelligent. They know they're professional people. Well, now we've got to start to look at, what does that need to look like? Right. And I think that's the what it looks like. I think we need to have a really strong debate about what's right. I mean, I've lost count in the last 6 weeks, probably during this period, of how many people have contacted me from the various organizations and national bodies and groups of people who represent people in 6 or 7 different people. Tell us what your situation is. We're going to take this to government, or we're going to take this to this body or that. Well, who is it? Who's the one body who's going to make the biggest difference, and what does that look like, and how do we all buy into it? Not let's just get through this period now and let's go back to what it used to be like. And definition of madness again. We keep doing what we've always done. We were on the cusp. There were some great changes in what's been happening in sport and within physical activity. There's also a lot of stuff in there that everybody in the heart of hearts would go, it's probably not the most ideal way of doing it. And there are better ways of doing it, and there are more effective ways of doing it. But no one's up for the change, really. Yeah. And maybe now is this is the opportunity for us all just to reset. You can tell now, looking around, everybody's of a different mindset. Yeah. Because they have to be, So what do we all need to do collectively to make it better? Not for us as individuals who have sat in a role and that's their job title. What do we need to do for the 4, 5, 6-year-olds out there who are going to just about to embark on their life in sport and playing sport? So what does it look like for them? And how do we make it look for them? Not create the model we had on them.
Powerful stuff, that though, isn't it? And I really love talking to you about this sort of stuff, because it's that again, playing to your philosophy about looking for opportunities, looking for development, and is the time really ripe and right embrace some of these changes? A lot of people are quite scared, aren't they, and being a bit cautious of making bold moves. But I think what I'm getting from you is that passion and the experience of this might be the opportunity.
And I think you're probably right. It's understandable. Understandable why people wouldn't want, or would be not scared but unsure, because there's so much there's so much insecurity and challenge that there is there, and we still don't know everything, but we know that ultimately we'll come out of this and it will be just different. So what do we need to do to prepare to be different? I mean, one of the things that I always go back to, it was a Sport England funded management development leadership program way back. It was Telos Partners who were delivering it, and I met two people who always had an impact on. So Rosie Mays, who was a coach and made a massive difference on my development personally. But Alan Davis, he was the Welsh Rugby Union coach, and he used to talk about. He said, "Everyone, what's your framework for success?" And everyone starts with a purpose and what we're trying to achieve and why. And we write some values and a vision statement and a mission and a strategy. And here's all the actions we need to do to deliver it.
Yeah.
And they miss out the whole, well, who are we going to do that with? And who will be important to achieve all of that purpose? And who are our partners? And what does success look like for them? Because we've defined what success looks like for us, but we haven't defined success for other people. So what does that look like? And then how do we measure and reward that and make that? What's the framework we put around it? We've seen really recently when a government sets a target, they're hellbound on will hit the target.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything. It's a pointless exercise. It then immediately is useless. But that's only when you've done all of that can you start, what should we now do? Why? And how do we improve that? So it's, that's one of the things that Alan Davis was brilliant at. And just saying, don't go straight from your strategy to your action plan, because if you miss out the other bit, and that's that bit about key relationships, that's that bit about the networking, that's that bit about the influence, that's that bit about really understanding how do you know you're going to be successful.
Well, and it plays to that point, as you mentioned before. Actually, you want to deliver things with people. You can't do it on your own, whether the ship's a big ship or a small ship, or your organization is big or small or whatever. Is that it actually takes more than you. There's a bigger system in play here, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's it. So, and we've got one hell of a big system in sport, and there's lots of people and individuals and organisations in it, and some of it's counterproductive, I think, or it doesn't give us the optimum return on our investment. I also think there's a lot of interference that goes on in sport, and there's that huge potential, and then there's a lot of interference, so that then obviously reduces the performance level it has to do.
Pete, you're a person that's obviously grabbed hold of opportunities through your career, and we're talking here about the opportunity that sat with us now, to press reset or go again. And I'm sure you've had a little go at many different things. Some obviously have been really successful and others less so. And I'm curious to hear about maybe one or two stories of something that you've had a go with that didn't go to plan, but you managed to pull your way through it. Because I think at this time, this is a chance for us to give it a go. And actually, we can't be certain of success, but we can be certain that we can pull our way through it. And I'm wondering if you have any stories you could share with us.
Yeah, there are probably a million different ones where you've walked into a brick wall, or And I think mainly it's not so much a particular thing that sticks in mind. There are probably several. I think it's about getting that real clarity at the start. That framework for success is, if you don't get that clarity of your why at the start, and I think where I've probably failed, and as I said, there'll be probably hundreds of projects which didn't see the light of day, or didn't go well, or didn't impact as well as they should have done, because you didn't start from getting the why right. Why are we doing this? It's almost and some of those could have been, it was a commercial sponsor. They've come into a sport and going, this is what we need to do, and this is what we're going to put our name to. And you've gone along and into cricket. Let's look back in cricket days. Quick cricket, hugely successful. And still now in my coaching bag, I've got blue plastic bats, which, by the way, are indestructible.
They are. They're brilliant.
It was brilliant. And quick cricket was this enormous impact on the game, getting millions of kids playing. And it was a great opportunity. And then once you got to a point in your development of right, you're playing with a hard ball, put a helmet on and pads, and you got these kids going, whoa, I quite like playing that game. And there was this, I remember at the time at ECB, we said, we've got to have this intermediate game. We've got to bridge the gap between quick cricket and the hard ball. And I remember starting, and it was almost, well, come up with a name first. So we got a brand and a name, and one of the sponsors has said they'll do the kit for it, and they didn't really want to do it to spend too much money. So they'll find some kit they already had in their warehouse in India or China, and that's what you have it. And we ended up with this ridiculous game, which was wooden bats, which were made out, because it was wood. Well, we can't have English willow because they're expensive. So we'll have these pieces of wood that weighed like 500 weight. The kids couldn't lift up. Everything about it was counterintuitive, and you knew we didn't start with the why was, how do we create this transition? What do? We should have another adaptive version of the game. The kit worked. The plastic kit worked. There's nothing wrong with plastic kit. There was nothing wrong with maybe a different coloured stumps, but because we didn't really get our key relationships defined by success for them, which was probably straightforward bottom line profit. Well, if we do this, it's really expensive to tool up the machinery to make this kit like this, like you want it, and import it. It's going to be too expensive. And therefore, you didn't go through that key relationship, define success, how are we going to performance manage this whole process. We just went straight into it. We're having a game, it's called Into Cricket. Someone's designed a logo already. And it was almost the first, it started with a logo, not
the wrong way around.
Yeah, everything was the wrong way around. And it was one of those things you go, I'm never going to get involved in something like that again, because this is ridiculous. And it was ridiculous. And you were out there saying this is the intermediate game, and people are looking at you really going, this is rubbish.
How did you pull through that? Where did it go to? Did it get out there, and did you have to pull it back, or did you?
It went out there. There's probably people banging fence posts in with the bats now, because that's what they'd be good for. And it was one of those. You just had to go, it's wrong, and what happened was I think it was the end of a sponsors agreement, and it was one of those lovely things we'd be able to go, take that off the shelf. It's not there. We don't talk to the new sponsor about it, and that's that thing I talked about before about logos in sport, logos. And it's sometimes, how many times have we done a program or a sport development program or a participation program to meet the needs of a sponsor who wants some collateral to deliver something? Do you really design what the individual participant needs, or do you define the success? In that region, this is what the sponsor wants. That's where you get the challenge. And when I was at football and at the FA, my point was lots of organised football, lots of structured football, lots of leagues and cups, and I mean the sport makes incredible success out of doing that. There was more people playing football just who wanted to just play.
Yeah,
I just want to play. Jump, not quite jumpers for goalposts, but I just want to play. Just get on a ball and I want to play. I don't want any structure. I don't want any organisation. And it took a while, but once Mars got hold of, and that was initially Mars wanted a program, and actually by working with them and defining success and working with, we then got a very different. Well, yeah, there's a lot of people out there who just want to just play football.
But I guess But playing to your point there, looking at it, do you look at it from the commercial aspect or the sponsors aspect, or is your starting point and your why based around your participant or your customer? Actually, what is the needs of the person involved?
It's participant-centric, person-centric. Yeah, I remember, again, another business development program, or business management program.
Yeah.
And it was at Cranfield Business School, which incredible people there, some great brains in industry, and I've worked with some fabulous organisations, and there was something there in the middle of a lecture. It wasn't the lecture. It wasn't this is what we're doing today.
Yeah.
It was just something within. It was about customers, and it was about the business that you're running, and there was just one thing in there that just talked about put your customer at the centre of your thinking. and it was, it was literally the light bulb went on. Why do we not do this at the centre of all our thinking? And now all we talk about now, participant focus. And rightly so. But I remember that point there of, we have to, when you turn up for my coaching session on a Friday night at the cricket club, it's not about my plan about what I'm doing and right, we're going to get through this plan tonight, because you arrive and you've got what you've got. Right, what do they want? What's good for them, and with a structure, obviously, and with an outline plan. But you've got to think about what do my participants want. I want them back next week. I want them to improve. I want them to enjoy it. I want them to have a smile on their face, but actually, I want them to still be playing in 50, 60 years' time with a smile on their face.
And is that really a key measure? Because I guess what I'm really fascinated about in terms of your story is that working on big, large projects in terms of creating participation and development within a sport, i.e. cricket or football, but even the right way, if you parallel that down to actually I've got 15 young boys in front of me, what is the success of their development? And is it something around, actually I want them to come back next week? Is it nearly as simple as that?
I actually do think it is, and go back to mention Pat Duffy before, who was chief executive, and not just a really lovely man, but a really great thinker, and probably influences more people in coaching than we actually realised how many people he influenced with what he said. But I remember he used to talk to me about, I think it was his brother, or I think it was his brother who played Gaelic football, and he had a picture that he used to use of this guy would have been mid-50s or thereabouts. They're playing this, quite a crackpot game, really, in some ways, but loving it. With a smile on his face. He played it for 50 years, and then he talked about, he talked about a picture of a young kid playing sport for the first time or being active, and the smile on their face. Yeah. He says, our job is just to take them through. Yeah, and they still have a smile, and they love him playing sport when they're mid to late 50s or whatever. Yeah. And if we all do that, we don't need any programs. We don't need any. It is just, how do we do that?
Well, and having worked for Pat Duffy as well, I recognise him as being a real big influence on my life. He also used to talk about with a little girl called Hope, and giving people hope through their opportunities to play. And I think it just resonates also with you. It's taking them through a journey, but it's one of the words that I've picked up along the way of how do we give people opportunity, give them hope that they can progress and improve and enjoy and have a smile on their face and so on. And it feels like it's a real parallel that you've brought that through the different journeys that you've had in both in cricket and in football, maybe even more so going into the sports that you're working in now in American football.
Yeah, and I think you want to create the opportunities. That thing I said about the start of those four, that you create the right opportunities for some, like hope. It's just participation, and it's enjoyment, and it's coming back next week. And there comes a point when Hope gets to a point where she's actually quite talented, and she's now, the opportunity for her now is to do something slightly different. Yeah. And I think in sport sometimes we're reticent at times to pass on an athlete or a participant or a player to somebody else, because that's actually the right thing to do. They need to now go and play here or somewhere else, and knowing when that's the right time to pass them on, and knowing the right environment they need to move to. I think that's sometimes the trick. And not you're the coach, I need to coach this person, they're talented, I want a bit of glory out of this. Yeah. Well, no, give them to someone else who actually knows what they're doing with elite players or talent players, and pass them on at the right time.
Is that one of the biggest challenges we face, do you think, in the kind of sport and talent development arena here now? That kind of, how do we help progress?
Yeah, I think it's better now. I think it's improving. I don't think it's improved full stop and it's right. Okay. I think there's still a huge amount to do in identifying the right environments for youngsters to play in. I still doesn't sit comfortably that we play elite county sport in many sports, and football academies at 7, 8, and 9. It does not feel right. It's not right. So why are we doing it?
Why are we doing it?
I've never. Logos and egos. It comes back to that, probably. I just don't think it's right, and I think I think Bayern Munich recently have just said, right, no more. Well, they're probably right. They know they're right because it's the right thing to do. So I think we want young people to experience as many sports as possible, many environments as possible. They'll make the choice at the right time. Now, it's difficult if you're an early specialisation sport. If you go back to, if it's a gymnastics or swimming, they tend to be early specialisation. Yeah. Well, I understand that, but in team sports, that's just the right age to start with. And in team sports, it's probably 13 or 14, probably. The academic research, going back to what I said before, academic research starts to talk about 13 and 14 as the first point where you start to think about specialising. Well, if the academic research says that, maybe we follow that.
And I'm also wondering here, I'm wondering whether these conversations were still had when you started working on the Champion Coaching Project back then, and are we still having those conversations now? And I'm wondering why. And if the academic research is saying this, what needs to be done, or what are we not doing? I wonder.
I think it's down to it's individuals and individual organisations that they feel the need to control and. Yeah. And a lot of it will be down to finance and success and reward. And are we rewarding the right things? Champion coaching back in 92 was, 11 to 15, 16-year-olds you had, and the part of the process was to do a program of coaching with them and make them better and make them enjoy it and give them an opportunity to go and join a club.
And do lots of things or whatever.
It wasn't which club. It wasn't for that. It was just that we have pass them on, put them in the right environment, create the right opportunity for them. For some, it probably wasn't right to go into a club. But for many, and some of them, you identified talent that they wouldn't have ordinarily had an opportunity. And then I know many of those kids suddenly went straight into really good standard of cricket at the time. Because they wouldn't have been seen by their local club because they weren't a part of their local club. Nothing to do with it. They didn't have a culture of being in it. So, but coming back to your point, I think it's, why have we done it? It's finance, reward, success, and it's difficult to come back from that. It's difficult to do anything other than, and if you're a very big, powerful sports club who want the best talent, you can buy it and you could keep hold of it. That's not doing that. If it was centered on that participant, is that the right thing to do?
You're really making me sort of also ponder here about, we used the word a bit about kind of reset and restart maybe around now, and the opportunity that, we're going through quite an interesting time for organisations and teams in both, professional sport, Olympic sport, all sports, junior grassroots sport. And I wonder what our current circumstances will guide us to, really. And I wonder whether this is an opportunity to address some of those issues. Do you have a thought or a view?
No, I think it's right, and I think it will create stronger links in communities.
Right.
Because that's what used to happen. You played in a local club, and you ended up being, you're quite talented, and you were probably one of the better players, and then suddenly you were asked to go along and play in a rather representative game, and and eventually the county might have had a look at you, and you ended up maybe playing a couple of games and doing well or not, or you worked out whether you were good enough or not. But it was a connection between the elite professional team in the community, whether it be a football team, a rugby team, or a cricket team, and it linked into its community of schools and clubs, and there was a real connectivity. And I wonder now with we just take these youngsters and we put them in an academy and we create a hot. Now, there's a lot of really good things that you've got to say now about what happens with academy. That some of the coaching they have and the development they have and the education they put around them, it's second to none. Ultimately they're looking for one or two people out of tens of thousands. And my point is always, that's fine if you're taking them up the system and up the performance pathway, as long as if they fall out, we've got a safety net to catch them and feed them back in and look after them and then take them through. It might be a bit later when they come out.
To find their place, I guess, in the system.
Yeah. I think it's about, there'll always be late developers, but it's about, when they drop out and they don't have a safety net, what happens. And we've seen it time and time again in many sports, not just football. You know, if anything, what football do is the ultimate meritocracy. They find the very best. It's what it's what's been left behind is sometimes the challenge.
So, Pete, I'm conscious that we're talking about, you know, how do people progress through their careers, and, you know, just to parallel that back to you and your career, can you identify a person where you maybe felt like you might have fallen out and they held you or they inspired you to keep you on your journey, and what it was about them? Because I'm just keen for, you know, people that are listening in to really think about their journey and what they need to put around themselves, and whether they can learn something from the experiences that you've had and who've helped you.
Yeah, I think what's helpful for everybody is always have that trusted friend, that trusted confidant, that whether it's a coach or a mentor, or whether it's, you know, but I think that's important to have someone that you can do that with, not your line manager and not your boss, but someone that you can have that conversation with. I'm really lucky. I've got, you know, through my time in sport, I've, you know, a lot of people who are close personal friends and who act in that role. I'm really lucky. One of my best mates is Chris Brindley, who's one of the leading people in sport in this country, leading the Rugby League World Cup, independent. He's one of my best mates, and he was one of my best mates before he was in all of those roles. So I'm really lucky that when I'm having a bad moment, it's a beer and a chat, and you get the benefit of Chris's huge wisdom and expertise. But I'm really lucky in that regard. But having people like that around you, I think that is the real important thing. That, you know, everyone has a wobble. You know, there'll be people today having wobbles, and the people you perhaps don't expect to wobble, because you always look at them as being, oh, they don't wobble, they never have bad days, they never wake up in the morning with doubt. And actually, sometimes you just need a sounding board and just to put yourself right and help you that way.
And what does the likes of Chris bring to you, you know, in terms of somebody looking to put some of that system around them? What does he bring? What does he offer you that would help others think about what they put around themselves?
I think most of it is it's creating that confidence, building your confidence, but more a lot of it's the challenge, great challenge. You know, they shouldn't be frightened. We don't want someone around us who's telling us we're right all the time. That's for sure. You know, one of my greatest support mechanisms is my wife, who works in sport. And she, again, because she works in the industry, it's great to bring a different perspective of challenge. Yeah. You know, you're saying one thing and you think and then you suddenly hear another perspective, and you think that's actually. Yeah, that's changing my thinking. And, you know, you're not always what you think is right. I'm right, and I'm in. Yeah, it's like level 5 leadership in good. Yeah. Actually, it's just having lots and lots of really good people around you, and making not the big noise leader, but it's just surrounding yourself with really talented people. Yeah. And that's probably, you know, I'm really lucky in that respect. I've got a lot of friends and colleagues who are hugely talented, and they're massive support to you.
But I do love the perspective you put on it, in terms of actually it is about the support, but it's also about the challenge. You know, it's about seeing the different perspectives and valuing that, because, you know, I think we are very good at sometimes proving a point to ourselves, or only seeing it through the lens, or we ask ourselves the questions we know the answers to, and having somebody sometimes ask a question that we haven't got the answer to is a really helpful perspective and challenge.
And that was one of the things when I first went to cricket. You know, think about it. I've had a career in banking. But I'm a lad from a council estate who's now at Lord's Cricket Ground, surrounded by the great and the good of, you know, the MCC and all its history, and ECB with all these, you know, great people, you know, with massive long first-class careers and test careers. And the doubt when you work into some of those environments is actually, oh my God, should I be really here? Yeah. You know, have I won this in a game show? Going through that process of building your own confidence. No, I've challenged myself. I know I'm right, and this is the argument I'm going to make, and I think that's really important. But having people around you who just have that little word and going, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And
Yeah, and it's a lovely point, I think.
What it's going to look like from the other side, and just turning some of your thoughts back at you a little bit. And Lordy was always great at that. I was always in awe of him. At least, I'd never tell him that, but I always used to sit back and go, "Cool." When this bloke talks, and there was 2 or 3 other people at ECB, Bruce Cruz, who's now head of their facilities. When some people talk, you listen, and you don't immediately go, "No, I know I'm right here," but actually they're saying something I haven't thought of here. Yeah. And just listening and playing it through is massive, bonus to to what you're doing.
And you've flipped it for me lovely there in terms of actually some of what you bring to this, in terms of actually having a group of people around you, but actually opening your own ears really to listening and taking on board what people have got around you is a real valuable thing. It's not saying that you took everything on board and implemented it, but actually digested it and worked it out for yourself to go forward.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing. It is that, well, what does this look from the other side? Have I thought of everything here? The scenarios, have I played them through? Some of the scenarios I haven't played through because, well, clearly I wouldn't think that way because someone else thinks differently. Yeah. And I think it's that, you're seeking to understand. Yeah. That's really important. Have I understood everything? Before I make myself understood, I've got to understand the environment I'm in. I think that's really important. And
the good old Stephen Covey quote, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
First, seek to understand, then be understood, isn't it? I think it stands the test of time, doesn't it? From what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it's only when you asked me to do this, and I sort of thought back of you talk about some of the books, and I realised that Covey's book is probably the one that I've always had and referred to, and I don't talk about the book. You must read this and you must read that, but it's only what you actually realise, like years and years later of doing it, however many years ago, you realise everything you're saying and thinking and doing. Actually, everybody else's book is from that same book. They've all taken one part of it and written another book or another program on the back of it, and it's actually going back to that sort of thinking. That's pretty much where it is, about that working from becoming independent and then becoming interdependent is really, really important. So that those young people out there who are going on this journey, you don't suddenly go from where you are to where you want to be. There's a journey, and you have to really get that right and put people around you on the journey.
Yeah. Well, Pete, it's a great segue because, bringing us to a kind of a focal point, I'm going to fire a few questions at you, okay? And we could get carried away here because there's so much more we could cover. We haven't really delved into the Great Britain American football world or any of that sort of stuff. But I'm going to fire a few questions of you, and then we'll come to some of that stuff. But see if we can keep quite sharp. And I know this is going to press a few buttons because I'm going to ask you to start off with about a few books. And you've often said here, you're not big into your books, but the gems that you've come out with, I know have come from some places. So
they probably have. I don't read one book over and over again, I think like that. But I realised in preparation for this, there was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. I realised that I took an incredible amount from that. More recently, probably the last 2 years or so, maybe 2 to 3 years, turning the ship around, David Marquette, I know a lot more about submarines now than I did before I read the book, clearly.
Yeah, I did.
But the concept of, we've all, leader, not leader, follow. And it's, the challenge to that is I found that really, really fascinating. And then, and probably over and above that, one book I go back to from years and years, when I was Tom Peters, Passion for Excellence. It's as relevant now as it was in, probably the mid-late 80s. Yeah. And Tom Peters, it was In Search of Excellence, A Passion for Excellence. He was
before the time, aren't they? A lot of
that. Very much so. But when you actually start talking about, the mayor of Baltimore, who just, the only way he was going to get the potholes filled in Baltimore was he sold them all for Valentine's Day messages. He basically said, you want a Valentine's Day message on the street, we'll put the tarmac in, fill it up, we'll paint the picture, we'll send you a picture. And you think, that sort of thinking...
There's opportunities that maybe you've ever heard of it,
Well, there we go. We talk about potholes out there now. So Passion for Excellence for Tom Peters was good. Probably more...
One more if you've got, or not? Just one more.
Oh, well, one more. Oh, blimey, I've got a list here. Probably... I'll do 2.
Go on then, yeah. great.
Well, Good to Great, Jim Collins, just the philosophy around it, not the book itself, but just the concept of level 5 leadership. And then probably in terms of thinking, Matthew Syed, Black Box Thinking. Yeah. And by the way, Matthew won't thank me for this. You don't have to read the whole book. Just read the first 2 comparative chapters of airlines and National Health Service, and you'll get it. And they'd be the ones I would.
Yeah, well, we like those little tips as well, because some of us like reading books and others like short, sharp sort of sound bites, which are really helpful and useful, and we can take what we need.
My wife's always one of those. She goes, "Oh, what's that book you're reading?" And I'm looking at that. Well, just tell me about it at the end. I don't have to read it.
Read it for me. Go on, let me move you on. What kind of technology do you engage in? What's been really helpful and useful to you? What would be your go-to thing?
My phone. We're an Apple household, I guess, is what I think I would say. Yeah, my phone. When you actually think about having that one thing in your hand, I find it. I'm of an age now, 59 this year. I can go back. I can remember 3 television channels. Yeah. And I can remember when those television channels didn't start until 4 o'clock in the afternoon as well, by the way. And black and white TV. So, to have in my hand an ability for music, television, downloads, a computer more powerful than the one that put man on the moon, the communication elements of it, the apps, the at your fingertips.
What do you use your phone? What do you use your phone for most, would you say, nowadays? Because it's not a phone, is it? As you say.
No, and that's the thing. It's not a phone. I mean, it just happens to make calls as well. Yeah. That's the thing. I've got it now. It is pretty much all the information I need. I pay at the till with it. It's your banking app. It's all my photographs of my grandchildren and my family and. I don't know. And if I'm on a train and coming back, well, not that you do that at the moment, but train back from London, you'll just download something off Amazon Prime and watch a documentary. That ability in your hand, I find, incredible, especially when I speak to my stepson and my grandchildren. They're all sort of similar. And it's the incredulity of them going, well, which games did you used to play when you were a kid? Which programs did you watch on your phone?
Amazing, isn't it?
The phone in my house was, when we eventually got one, was a great big thing, black thing that you dialed, and actually we shared the line with Mrs. Morgan from down. We had a shared line. Sometimes you pick it up and you could hear someone else on the line, and that's just incredible in my view. So. Yeah, probably the thing I could never do without my phone.
Okay, no, good stuff. Right, I'm going to speed us up here now. So, quick, sharp answers, and this is a challenge for us then. How do you prepare yourself to be in the best shape you can, both physically and mentally?
Exercise. I'm very lucky. I live on top of the Lancashire Hills. Over the wall from me is the Lancashire Hills. There's millions of acres. Just get out in some fresh air, sunshine, and sometimes just look at them.
Good. Yeah, no, I like it. If you won the lottery, how would you spend your significant winnings?
Set up a foundation for sport and invest it back in young people playing more sport.
Great. What advice would you give to your teenage version of yourself?
Blimey.
Given your career.
I think going back to what we said before about have a clarity of why you want to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Create yourself that purpose. I wish that I had that purpose of making a difference and the things I talked about before really early, because every decision you make based on your purpose and your values, and if you've got those at the start of your career, you'll make more good decisions than bad decisions.
Yeah. Lovely, really powerful stuff. That Pete, you've mentioned a number of people along, throughout the conversation today, but I'm going to ask you focus down onto 2 or 3 people that have really positively impacted on you.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned Sue Campbell at the start, absolutely influential. Alan Davis, absolutely, and then probably on a day-to-day basis, now, one of my best mates, Chris Brindley, just very, very clear, sharp, focused on supporting but challenging, but absolutely, it's coaching probably without me realising it.
And I don't know if it's one of the same questions here, but then. If I was to ask you, whose sports story would you most like to hear? Given, the conversation we've had today,
Blimey, that's so many. I mean, you have all your heroes. That's a really difficult one.
Yeah.
You have all your heroes, but if I could really get and understand that it is a hero. George Best was absolutely the finest footballer that ever lived, but just to understand from his perspective, not what everybody else says about it.
Yeah.
I'd just love to hear from his perspective.
Yeah, and from his mouth, nearly.
Yeah,
interesting.
What was his why? Who were his support? Who were his mentors? And why? And that I find that incredible. To understand, where he came from.
Pete, you've shared such a lot, and as I said, your day job now is involving building up and creating a fantastic opportunity with a new governing body. And I think you mentioned it to me earlier on today about actually not having a lot of the politics around it. Do you want to just tell us, just before we sign off, a little bit about what you're currently doing and what you hope to do in the future with that? Just so, who's listening get a bit of a sense of what journey you're currently on and where you're going.
Yeah. And it was one of those moments of almost semi-retired. Started doing some consulting, some coaching, and sort of winding down a little bit, and then looked at lots of opportunities that were coming around in sport with tens of hundreds of years of baggage of governance and structures and blazers and white-haired middle-aged men who only see their sport this way, to an opportunity to work with what I feel is one of sport's best kept secrets. I love the sport, as everybody sort of sees the NFL and the razzmatazz of American sport, but actually in this country, we've got the best part of 15,000 players. We've got over 200 clubs, and it's the chance to really. We've always talked in sport about building a high performing national governing body. Now that's possible. Quite often you've got to undo huge amounts. This is an opportunity to work with, I'm not going to say there aren't politics, but there's an opportunity with a great board, with a fantastic chair, with a passionate and committed volunteer workforce, because before me, it was all voluntary and still is.
Yeah.
In essence, there's only me as a paid employee.
Yeah.
But the passion and the commitment and the drive of where they can take the sport, that's what is really exciting. Building that high performing governing body, looking at where you can actually go with it, is just an opportunity, too good to miss.
Well, good luck on that. And, given everything that you've shared today in terms of what you did in cricket and, the impacts and the changes in football, there should be no doubt that we can't keep taking this one on a journey, in terms of actually moving it on. So I want to wish you really good luck on that. And I'm really keen to be a part of it in terms of hearing how things progress and move on. So good luck. And thanks for being so open and honest along our story today. I think for me, knowing some of what you've shared, but also finding out new parts about you, and especially coming back to that real make a difference purpose, I think has come through really powerful. And never before do we need, I think, in the sporting landscape, people that are looking to make the most of opportunities and overcome elements of diversity, because we've got some big challenges ahead. And I think having that kind of positive outlook and stance on the world going forward, and recognizing the power that we can actually generate through sport is fantastic. So thanks for enlightening me and engaging me with that passion today. And should people want to find out a little bit more about what you do and how you're doing it, can they make contact with you in any way or find out through any vehicles at all?
Absolutely delighted to on LinkedIn. For my Twitter handle, you have at Ackers1961, and I'm here at pete.ackerley@britishamericanfootball.org. So, very happy if there's any part of what I'm doing that's of interest to people or can share anything anyway, I'd be delighted to. But, I've been incredibly fortunate of the best part of 30 years involved in sport and taking something from sport in sport development terms, and, be delighted if I can give just one small bit back.
Yeah. Well, Pete, I think you've given back and you're continuing to give back. So once again, thanks for being with me today. And who knows, maybe in a couple of years' time or even a few months' time, we can come back together and have another conversation as things continue to move. But thanks again, really appreciate your time. And what I'll make sure is I'll put elements of your contact details on the show notes below the podcast so people can make contact. Thanks again. It's been a great pleasure to be with you today.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there we have it, the journey of Peter Ackerley, from banking to British American football, via significant time spent at the England Wales Cricket Board and at the FA. I'm sure you'll agree Pete has some great insights and experiences and has worked at his career and followed a clear passion and purpose. I've taken many reflections from Pete's story, but I am led to think about what success means to me. I would therefore like to pose the following questions to you. What is your framework for success? And who are your key partners and support to enable you to progress? I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections, so please get in touch at www.sportstories247.com. You can also make contact via LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. Please also leave a review on all the major podcast platforms, as it would be great to hear your thoughts. So from me, Dave Levine, look after yourself, take care, and I really look forward to having you with me on the next show.